Hello, welcome to Breakfast with the Board. My name is Martha Thompson. I'm the Self-Defense Coordinator and a member of the NWMAF board. I signed on for 2020 to 2022, and I'm delighted to be here. I wanted to say a little bit, how did I end up here? I took my first karate course in 1970, yeah, that's like 50 years ago, at Kent State University. I was part of the women's liberation movement on campus, and I felt like I needed some self-defense training, and at that time there wasn't anything available that was called self-defense. So I signed up for karate. And then that fall, I started a new job, and it took me 18 years, well, actually more than that, before I got back to karate. But in 18 years, I discovered impact self-defense, and I became an instructor. And then 3 years later, I found out about NWMAF, and I've been a big fan and a part of NWMAF ever since. I got certified as an NWMAF instructor, I believe it was in 2003. So I've been doing this for a while. And I guess that would mean 2003, 1988, I guess I was certified. I've been teaching like 15 years, teaching self-defense for 15 years before I certified as an NWMAF instructor. And I haven't attended every single camp, but I think I've only missed one or two at most since 1991. So as you can tell, I'm really committed to the work and committed to being part of the self-defense instructors' work, as well as martial arts and healing arts. I decided today for Breakfast with the Board that I would talk about certification, because lately I've had several people asking me about, well, what's NWMAF certification for self-defense instructors? Why is it worth it? Why should I think about it? Things like that. And because NWMAF is such a community, I reached out to colleagues and ask them. So you'll be hearing from some of my colleagues and some other empowerment self-defense instructors as I go over what certification is. I do want to start off though with two people. One, the first one, Sylvia Smart, is one of the newest certified instructors. Sylvia is runs Naga Martial Arts Self-Defense Community in Beaverton, Oregon. And here's what she had to say. As a person who's been teaching ESD for over 30 years, I got 3 of the things I was hoping for and more from the NWMAF certification process. Community. I've been feeling isolated and was sure I wasn't the only one out there doing this work, and was amazed and surprised to find NWMAF and the certification process. 2, professional development. I know for a fact that I can always get better at whatever I'm doing. And 3, affirmation. My experience was solo, and I was yearning for some professional acceptance and certification. That's Sylvia. And then I also heard from Lauren Taylor, who was among one of the first self-defense instructors certified by NWMAF way back in 2000. And Lauren is with Defend Yourself, the founder, Defend Yourself at Washington, D.C. Here's what Lauren had to say. After teaching for about 15 years, I thought certification wouldn't make any difference to my life. But the affirmation from ESD leaders and peers was powerful. And bureaucratically, for example, with insurance and dealing with large organizations as clients, being able to say I had certification eased the path. also doing a overview of what I've been doing every 5 years. We do recertification every 5 years, is valuable, and it's not something I would be doing otherwise. So from a span of over 20 years of certification, those are Sylvia and Lauren shared what was valuable to them. Now, I want to talk about what this certification process is, but not the details. You can get all the details you want. I'm going to just say it slow, but NWMAF.org/SDI-certification-overview. Or you can just go to the NWMAF.org website and search for self-defense certification. And if you have questions about certification, you can also email Amy Jones, who's the certification coordinator, at certification@nwmaf.org, or me, Martha Thompson, at selfdefense@nwmaf.org. And I hope you'll reach out. But today, who wants to talk about details over breakfast? I decided I wanted to talk about the spirit of it. Kind of what is underlying, what is this all about? And the Empowerment Self-Defense certification within NWMAF is based on principles, not on a specific methodology or specific techniques, or this is what you have to do and this is the way to do it. And partly that's because of how the whole certification process emerged, which I'll talk about more later. But it grew within NWMAF, and it really started in 1979 when NWMAF, or the Federation, was formed. But the idea is that when you bring together people who are coming from very different martial arts backgrounds and who are very dedicated and interested in teaching self-defense and have a whole variety of backgrounds, they each are bringing something important and of value. And what people discovered early on, there just isn't one way to do this. So let's focus on principles and not saying this is the way you do it. And so that is really the spirit of this certification process, is that how we are accountable to each other and what we commit to when we do certification is that we're going to focus on principles. And I want to just let you know what some of those principles are. And I'm kind of putting this in my own words, partly based on all my experience with NWMAF, but also a few years ago, I interviewed 29 self-defense instructors, NWMAF and Impact International. And these principles are things that sort of emerged from that. These are like really big principles. When you go to the website, you'll see that there are a lot of specific things. But this is the spirit of what we are agreeing to in principle and what we share, regardless of whether we're teaching like my system, which is Impact, or like I said, Defend Yourself in DC, or NAGA out in Oregon, or just so many other places from people that you will hear from. So principles. One of the first ones is that violence is a social issue, not an individual problem. And there are lots of different ways that we can communicate that as instructors. Some people share statistics. Some people do stories, either that they tell or that their students tell. So there's no one way to communicate that. But underlying the entire program is an understanding that violence is a social issue. It's not because this person did something wrong or that it was the way that that they moved in the world. And I think that the important thing with that is, and it again underlies all that we do with the NWMAF self-defense certification, is to communicate to our students, to the participants in our classes, that they are not alone. They are not to blame. This is not their fault that we're looking at a bigger social issue. And with that, violence is a social problem. We're also really addressing the realities of violence. So we're not just taking the unusual cases, which might make the headlines. We're looking at research, and we're very much evidence-based, research-based with the work that we do. But so we address the realities of violence. And that also includes considering what we call intersectionality, that we consider gender, race, social class, sexuality, disability, nationality, and how these connect with each other, and how this affects how people are targeted for violence, and how when they use self-defense, they're in a sense evaluated by the police and the criminal justice system. And we don't all have the same experience. And so that is a very important principle, to recognize violence is a social issue, not an individual problem. Secondly, a principle that's so important is that perpetrators, not victims of violence, but perpetrators are responsible for that violence. And as many of you no doubt know from your own experience, that there's so much victim blaming out in the world. How were you dressed? Why were you doing there? Why did you do that? Why did you act like this? And that is just not at all what we do in the NWMAF Empowerment Self-Defense Program. The emphasis really is on the responsibility of the perpetrators for the violence. It's not at all on those who are targeted in terms of being responsible for what occurred. So again, how people do that, how people weave it into their program, how they respond to questions about it might differ dramatically. But the principle is shared. The principle is the same if you are a certified instructor, that perpetrators are responsible for violence. Another thing that goes across the work we do, again, regardless of where we're teaching or what system we're teaching, is that physical movement and physical tools are essential. They're not the only tools, but that they are like sort of the bread and butter or the foundation of what we are teaching. And so that any NWMAF certified instructor will know how to teach physical tools, whether it's how to get a release from a grab. It might be how to stand and breathe and project confidence. It might be a strike to the face. It might be a strike to another part of the body. And we're not emphasizing what techniques to teach, but that there are a range of things that we would be incorporating into our programs that address physical tools and physical movement. So I know, for example, I didn't mention that I'm a 5th degree black belt in Sado Karate and studied with Nancy Lanou, and I studied with Nancy Lanou and Sarah Ledna at Thousand Waves. And Nancy and another member of our community there, Marie O'Brien, and I talked about like physical techniques. What do we share? So we found that we were all doing strikes to the face, but not necessarily the same one. And so the idea is we do physical movement. We do teach physical self-defense tools. But what they look like might be different, but that they're very important to what we're teaching. And teaching realistic tools that people can use to get out of a dangerous or threatening situation. And I should say, I think another principle embedded in that is that physical tools, like kicking somebody in the groin or striking somebody in the face, those are tools of last resort. And that leads us to this fourth principle that I'm going to mention today. Sorry, I'm taping this, so I'm really not having breakfast, but please don't tell anybody. Another principle is the idea it's a comprehensive toolbox to address violence, so that it's not just strikes and kicks, even though that's what people often think of as self-defense. And sometimes even within the women's martial arts community, that's what people might think. Not maybe NWMAF, but there might be other communities where people think of self-defense solely in terms of strikes and kicks. But we recognize that that's not typically what people have to defend against. And so we have this comprehensive toolbox that includes things like awareness skills, how we stand, how we breathe, our body language, our voices, assessing safety and danger, that there's this whole range of tools. And the idea is, the principle within that is that we offer self-defense tools to expand people's options, to expand choices. It's not do this, don't do that. That's not what we do. We want to enhance freedom, not limit it. I wanted to, this is something Darla Bolin from Columbus, Ohio, who's part of, does counseling, consultation, and self-defense. It sort of gets at this in the comments that she sent me. She says, what sets us apart from other self-defense programs is that we are trauma-informed, inclusive, and practice realistic scenarios, and discuss the reality of violence in people's lives. She also said, students expand their lives with options and choices rather than limit their mobility with fear-based rhetoric. And finally, she mentions, we also are aware that violence is on a continuum, and try to include responses to violence on the entire continuum, with an awareness that the continuum may look and be experienced differently by each person. So that, I hope, gives you a little bit of the spirit of what the certification process is about. But let me say again, it's about principles. It's not about a specific set of techniques, a specific set of things you must say. And this is rooted in our deep history of all these martial artists from very different martial arts styles and backgrounds coming together, training together, and sharing what they know. And one of the things I think is really exciting, NWMAF was formed in 1979, and self-defense was present really right from the beginning. And this commitment to respecting multiple ways of doing the same thing, of sharing with each other so we can all get better, so that we can learn from each other. That has been part of NWMAF since before the formal certification process was established. And I just find that really exciting and moving to know that we are part of such a deep and long history. Some of the benefits, people, let me just kind of segue to that some of the benefits already Lauren and Sylvia mentioned, and I think what Darla said as well. But overall, I think that some of the things that people have reported would fall under the certification process of just doing it has helped me develop as a teacher. I've become more up to date on my curriculum. I have increased credibility in my community. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that other empowerment self-defense instructors certified by NWMAF have said. This next comment is from Mona McDonald of Lioness Martial Arts in Pittsburgh. And she said, for me, the certification process helped me to really examine what I was doing as a teacher. And the reviewers helped me to uncover things I could be doing to make my curriculum and classes more state-of-the-art. She added, another benefit of certification is the power of being credentialed. It gives you credibility, puts people's minds at ease, and gives you a competitive advantage, especially with corporate clients. Clara Porter from Prevention Action Change, founder of that organization in Portland, Maine, said, as an ESD instructor, being involved in the NWMAF certification process has been invaluable. I get the opportunity to take a deep look into another instructor's practices and approach to ESD and hold deep discussions about the values, principles, and practices of our work. In that case, Clara is talking about the mentor process and the reviewer process, which is an important part of the NWMAF certification. So you don't just turn in the application and it's yay or nay. People read your application. If they see things they want to know more about or that they can make suggestions for improvement, you have a conversation about it. And so many people have reported that process has really been important in developing their own program, improving what they're already doing. Clara also talked about not only being a reviewer and a mentor, but when she went through the process herself. She says, my initial application was not accepted as I did not have enough time teaching on my own. I received specific feedback that I was able to act upon, and 2 years later, when I applied again, it was accepted. So she has the experience both of reworking her application, and then now she is mentoring and reviewing the work and giving feedback to other ESD instructors. Now here's a comment about a benefit that's actually not from a certified instructor, but somebody who has employees who are. That's Meg Stone, the executive director of Impact Boston. And Meg said, as an executive director of an ESD organization, I'm the one in the position of certifying others. Having certification from NWMAF is important because it's a statement that my approach to teaching is supported by people who are also leaders and executive directors. So if one of her employees is certified by NWMAF, it's not only a benefit for the employee, but it's a benefit for the entire organization of Impact Boston. Meg says further, having shared community standards amplifies my organization's approach to ESD. It gives me both support and accountability. It helps me stay in line with the highest values of feminist self-defense. So even though Meg's not certified herself, she has seen a benefit for her employees and instructors to receive that certification. Now, you might be wondering, well, I hear all this. I hear I don't have to do it a very specific way. Is this easy to do? Is it easy to get certification? Well, I'm going to say no, not particularly, but it's doable. It's possible. So let me tell you what Amy Jones, who is the coordinator of the certification for NWMAF right now. And Amy is a co-founder of Culture of Safety in Chicago, Illinois. And she says, NWMAF certification is intentionally a rigorous process. We've worked hard to make it only as complicated as it needs to be to maintain quality. So it can't be just a simple thing if we're going to have the highest possible quality. But as she's saying, it has to be doable, and it is. It's rigorous, but it's doable. Clara Porter, who I've already quoted her before, but here's another statement. She says, I believe the process is best suited for someone with ESD teaching experience. It's made for those who have a base of experience and have used the tools NWMAF offers to enhance their learning. So you see, it's not easy, but it's doable. And if you think back of some of the things that other people have said, and I can speak from my own experience, doing the application and being in conversation with my colleagues who were also teaching ESD, but were the reviewers of my application, I learned so much. I came to appreciate how much I was doing, and also saw places that I could be better. I guess kind of at the end here, I want to close with, how did this whole thing come about? How did the NWMAF certification process come about? I talked to Jay Spiro. She's one of the architects of the original NWMAF self-defense instructor certification process. She's with Majishi Martial Arts in Ferndale, Michigan. And Jay said, and these aren't, they should be exact quotes, but she and I had a phone conversation and I was taking kind of notes. But so if she says, I didn't say that exactly, it's probably the case. Anyway, what I got from her conversation was women in the 1970s often sought out martial arts because they were looking for self-defense training. And that's what I did. NWMAF arose because most of us were often the only woman in our martial arts school. We trained together and shared what we were learning and developing for self-defense. We had been sharing what we were doing since the beginning of NWMAF in 1979. And then in 1983, Sonny Graff offered the first NWMAF self-defense conference. The key things that arose in those early years are still around. Focus on principles. Don't get hung up on what techniques to teach. Learn from your colleagues. It's not something coming down from above. These are your colleagues. Even though you may know more, you may still have something to learn. And just in sharing what you know, you're going to enhance your own teaching. And let's keep getting better. So Jay really pointed out many of the things that are still present in our certification process. Janet Alves, who is a co-founder of NWMAF and one of the leaders in developing the empowerment self-defense movement that arose through NWMAF, she also commented, Janet is with Lotus Peace Arts in East Hampton, Massachusetts, and she says, I remember a conversation I had during or just after the NWMAF conference in Toronto in 1999 about how great it would be to figure out a way to certify self-defense instructors. It felt like a very lively and expansive time in NWMAF and in self-defense teaching. Lots of great women involved, including Peg Strain, who is also a core organizer from the start. Meg was from Michigan, and her organization was called Mona Lisa's Sword. Further, Janet said, the idea when they started talking about certification was to provide a flexible structure, for example, mentoring and an application process. So not that thumbs up, thumbs down, but working with people. For diverse instructors to present their unique approach to the work, to offer recognition and collaboration, to develop supportive spaces within and beyond NWMAF, for various teachers to exchange ideas and methods with each other, with students and in community settings, and to promote racial justice and all forms of feminist social justice through the work. So another principle is that social justice, that we are doing this work we do has an activist component, has a component that's really committed to creating social justice. So I hope one of the things you've noticed is I've cited a lot of people, but no two of them are from the same organization, or maybe even the same state. No, I guess Janet and Meg are both from Massachusetts, but all of the people I cited are from different schools, different styles. They teach in different ways, but what unites them is a commitment to common principles, and that we grow and learn and share as colleagues to colleagues. And sometimes that means somebody might be working, somebody maybe has only been teaching a year and somebody else has been teaching 30 years. And so that person only teaching 1 year, sure, has a lot to learn from the person who's been teaching 30. But that person who's been teaching 30 years is also learning. And so it just continues to be a terrific professional development opportunity to be involved in the process, not only as an applicant in getting that certification, but in ongoing work in terms of reviewing and mentoring. Reminder, for details, go to nwmaf.org and just click through. That's probably the easiest. Just click through to the self-defense certification, which you'll see at the top navigation panel. Or, as I said earlier, you can contact Amy Jones. Her email is certification@nwmaf.org, or you can contact me, Martha Thompson. My email is selfdefense@nwmaf.org. I know this is a lot of information, but yes, you can do this. And I look forward to seeing your application. Thank you. Bye-bye.